My name is Kevin Hajovsky, and I'm the Senior English Language Fellow out here in the Galapagos of Ecuador. Today I'm joined with a number of the Galapagos public school teachers who are observing. So please say hello to the world.
Hello. Hello.
So if you don't know the exact location of the Galapagos Islands, we're about 1,000 kilometers from the mainland of Ecuador, right here on the equator. It's famous for many things, including, of course, the animals and Darwin himself. Yeah, so today we're going to look at increasing classroom interaction, getting more from our course books, so that we can improve some of the practices that we have in our classes and continue to develop as professionals. Today, our objectives are going to be focusing on the building our awareness of the positive and the negative aspects of using course books. I'll turn the sound up. And of course, I want you to be sharing your strategies and techniques and continue to learn more about the effective use of them. If you look at the top of the page, there's a nice quote by Jeremy Harmer, one of my favorite guys in the field. He says that course books are proposals for action. They are not necessarily instructions for use. So this is something that we're going to consider with respect to how to use them more effectively. So again, throughout the webinar today, please share your ideas. We will continue to look for some of your input and some of your questions and try to answer those in a timely fashion. Just so you, oops, sorry about that. We had the wrong page there. Okay, just so you know, today I have a number of focus questions, 6 focus questions, and these will be throughout the program, so you can share your ideas, questions, or opinions. So, for example, our first question: in your opinion, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using coursebooks? Just use some of your past experiences, whether they're good or bad, or maybe they're wishes that you had for some of the course books you've used. Maybe they're insights that you've gotten from other teachers. Yeah, often this is somewhat of a philosophical question with respect to teaching. There's a bit of a personal feel for it, there's a professional feel for it, and sometimes there's even a cultural feel for it. Yes, there's often very little classroom preparation. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, they are a wonderful time saver. Structure, yes. Thank you, Luz. We have structure is very often given to a class through the course books. Yes, depending on the availability, it has a lot of good material in it that you can use, less preparation time. Yes, the grammar and vocabulary and ways to present are often found in the teacher books. Really good ideas there, absolutely. Providing tips and pointers, yes, that's something that you're seeing in a lot of the modern books. And if you don't use them, then of course add them to your repertoire or your tool set of teaching. Yeah, very good advantage. They can be used as a guide for teaching. Yeah, a lot of experienced teachers out there today. That's great to see. Yep, it's one of the disadvantages. Sometimes you cannot expand on the language that is taught much. So that's going to require a little bit of creativity from the teacher. One of the things we'll be talking about today. The naturalness of the language or the naturalness of the learning flow is limited. Sure, these are great ideas. Well, great. We have a number of ideas. Let's continue to share those so we can begin to continue to learn from each other. we're going to be focusing on just the advantages and disadvantages just to begin with, so we can just get a better idea of the bigger picture. So let's look at some of the potential advantages. The next slide comes up. Again, if you have any questions or comments as we move along, please feel free to add those. And my aides will point those out to me. Some of the potential advantages, good course books, as some of you have said, provide structure to the class or the semester by giving you a lot of the basic vocabulary, grammar, and the content around which you can build lessons. Yeah, we are all familiar with a lot of the general structure. Of course, they begin with meetings and greetings and things like this, and then they'll continue to develop through a grammar-based kind of development very often. In my own way, I like to think about the course book as kind of a skeleton, and the skeleton, again, is a structure. And then as you become more and more effective as a teacher, you're adding strength or muscle through the use of your methodological practices, building in pair work and group work. Second of all, a good course book will provide guidance to a class, and the students often get a very strong sense of accomplishment. As they're moving through the book, the students will often feel as if they're progressing, and then of course they can use it as a reference guide. Books are often wonderful just for building up starting points from which you can then extend the lesson outside of the book with activities. Though the students can still reference the book and use it to review. Yes, and also the book, as many of you mentioned, saves a lot of preparation time. This is very true, but we do want to be careful as professionals to continue to develop beyond the book. We don't want to abuse it. I've seen many teachers who will just simply come in and they will even ask the students, what page are we on? What page did we finish through? And you can tell they hadn't prepared. Students notice that very quickly, and if the teacher's not prepared, then the students are not going to prepare. Last but not least, very often the course book is expected by learners in schools. Again, this is connected to an overall culture of learning where the book is a tool, and it also gives the student a sense of support. Let's go on to the next slide. I did want to kind of go over some of the disadvantages because this is really, really important to consider. For example, if you get to choose your own book, or maybe you're part of a selection team, of course, at any possible time, I'd really like to see the teachers as part of that selection team. If you are a teacher, please do your internet research. There's a lot of information out there for guiding teachers to choose the best possible text for their situation. So look it out there on the internet. One of the #1 things that Dalby found in his research was that creativity, a lot of people believe that creativity is limited by the book. I still believe that a lot of the limitations are mostly based on the decisions of the teachers, so this is something that we will explore later on. The overall quality, design, and organization can be poor, though recently there are a lot of really good books out there that can be used. Some of the best books tend to be the most expensive books, but we have a saying in English, you get what you pay for. So if you think about it, if the book costs an extra $5 or $10 or even maybe $15, why that sounds like a lot, think about your preparation time. If a good book saves you that preparation time and it has a lot of good content, it can actually save you that time. So consider that when you're balancing that with the very often in books, the teachers will complain that the topics are boring or irrelevant. And this is true. They're getting better, but you do want to be aware of the topics that are covered there, which leads you to the context or the content that may not be culturally relevant. again, the books in the last 5, 10, 15 years have continued to get much better. But often these books are for an international audience. And this means that a teacher is if they're going to help the students connect with them more, they're going to consider how to infuse norm fields that are culturally relevant and locally understood by the students. So yeah, we'll continue to talk about that later on in PowerPoint. Very often in books, as teachers have noticed, the language is often inauthentic. So we do require, it does require teachers to really think about how to present the language as a living language rather than just something students have to memorize or use just for a test. So if you have any questions at this point, maybe you can ask us a couple, and we're going to continue to just explore some of these ideas as PowerPoint continues. My next focus question will be looking at the general kinds of techniques that some of you are using with respect to your course books. This is kind of focusing on the big techniques or the big ideas that you're using. It's not necessarily just the book itself. I am going to focus on 2 simple ideas that to some will seem very obvious. But I've been in a lot of classrooms in the United States, in South Korea, Uzbekistan, and other places where I see teachers not really thinking about this, not really planning their lessons clearly. Yeah, the topics are often not appealing to the students, absolutely. Adapting activities to overcome the problems, absolutely. Yeah, generally speaking, the kinds of things that I will be focusing on as a general rule are to maximize the amount of student talk, that is, maximize the amount of student interaction in your classes, and begin to think about how we as teachers can use books and our other tools to minimize the teacher talk, because it's the students that need to build their efficiency. Just one of the key techniques for creating interaction in our classrooms is just specifically focusing on how students are seated. Again, they can have the book in front of them, but if the students aren't seated for interaction, very often that's actually going to minimize what you're going to see in the class. So let's compare the pictures on the left with the pictures on the right. As you'll see on the left, you'll see more of a traditional setting of classrooms. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this per se, but generally speaking, most of the focus in these classrooms will be on the teacher conveying information to the students. More focus on an independent learning environment. Whereas if you look at the pictures on the right, you'll see the classroom is designed for a little bit more of an interactive environment where students are cooperating with each other. Students are sharing ideas with each other. The overall goal of a language classroom is hopefully to build proficiency. So this is something we want to bring into our classrooms, a sense where students feel comfortable doing pair work, comfortable doing group work together, which is central to interactive classrooms. Again, how you seat your classes will definitely affect the overall quality, and you want to continue to change that up over a period of time so that students experience other students' perspectives. Some of you have some great ideas that I'll be talking about. For example, using pictures and the activities and the arrangement. These are great ideas that you're bringing in. The second general technique is using the whiteboard effectively. This is so important in interaction, even with the workbook or the student books in front of them. I've been in so many classrooms, and I've seen everything from zero whiteboard, in which all of the interaction is just through the teacher speaking with no support. Sometimes I've seen the whiteboard used, but it's very, very disorganized. And sometimes it's very hard to read. Maybe the writing is too small. So if you're using the whiteboard, that's great. Start paying more attention to how you're using it as an effective tool with the student books. I've also seen beautiful whiteboards, and then the teacher will get it completely ready and then not exploit it. So let's learn how to use that whiteboard. Again, you can use it to provide language to guide students, starting at the top there. You can give students keywords from the content. Again, it helps students to both hear it and to see it and to use it later in the lesson. You can put really nice classroom language up there for the students to see and to work from. For example, if you had a brainstorm list of words, this is a great way, just to, as an example, it's a great way to warm up getting learner-generated language where they're actually owning the vocabulary that they're going to use. And then you can use that vocabulary to build predictions, do drills, games, pronunciation, pretty much anything. But the idea is that you're creating a better opportunity for students to feel supported so they can talk. If we use the brainstorm list of words, if you go down to the very bottom, you see models of language, sentence starters, sentence patterns. Again, all three of these are very helpful for those low-level students especially. Students can take notes, they can interact from it, they can use it as a later source. A lot of really useful ways to use a whiteboard. Please, please, please think about the whiteboard, your course book, and your teacher talk to really provide more opportunities for the students. I use it for giving instructions. I break down instructions using the target language. I use it for focus questions, a number of other things. Any questions about any of those? Yeah, please feel free to use the chat box to send us any questions, and we'll try to introduce that as part of our presentation today. My next focus question this is the big question. This is where we kind of really begin to look at the course books themselves. Let's read that first quote at the top by Eliot. It says, "Difficulties arise when we try to use textbooks exactly as they are, without thinking about the needs, without thinking about the skills and circumstances of this particular set of students sitting in front of us." I agree. The book is a very nice set of guidelines. It has a lot of text that we can use, but we do need to get out of the box and really begin to think about how to use it more creatively as part of our lesson. So that's my next question. What are some of the specific strategies, ideas, and techniques that some of you are using in your course book? Yeah, it's great for, as a start for organizing the information. Absolutely, it gives the students a sense of comfort having that book in front of them, using the language from it. Sure. Anybody else have some ideas on their strategies and ideas? Ooh, we have a long one here. Yeah, ranking students. Yeah, reading what's in the teacher's manual. Absolutely. I'm not saying don't use that teacher's manual. Use the teacher's manual. Think about some of the ideas. There'll be anywhere between 5 or 10 different ideas to use in a particular unit, and of course you should have your own toolbox that you can basically change the flow of the lesson to fit more of your teaching style. Again, working toward more student interaction. That's the big goal here. Is classroom interaction with the aid of the course book. Yep, using the book to review lesson goals and vocabulary and grammar, another great idea. And then, as someone was saying here, bring in authentic materials. Yes, that's a great idea when you have a vocabulary set in the book, is to think of materials or in context in which that language would be used more authentically. And then you can have students use those more authentic texts outside of the book. Extension activities, absolutely. This is something that is beyond the scope of this particular webinar, but the whole idea is to use that course book to prepare students for those extension activities. Excellent idea. Excellent. Very true. Electronic whiteboards are becoming more and more common. Hopefully, as the 21st century continues, a lot of you will get more access to that. Just remember, a master of methodology has hundreds of ideas in their teacher toolbox, which they use. Over time, teachers using the course books in their own toolbox will have these very, very creative and very, very dynamic lessons. A lot of great ideas here. I'm going to move along just to make sure we keep track of our time. I'm going to focus on basically the three common features of any book that you're going to see. There are so many ideas to consider with respect to how to use them, but I'm going to focus on these three major categories. The book's pictures, plus other pictures, which I'll talk about. How to use the texts more effectively. And then, of course, there's always a number of exercises in the book that are consistently found, but there are ways to create interaction from those that a lot of teachers will either forget or they're not quite aware of, which is what I'm hoping to do today, is build that awareness of how to use the books more effectively. And remember, all of these pictures, texts, and exercises can be used with some of the key techniques. Do you remember what those are? Again, that's the seating arrangement that you're using, as well as your whiteboard use. Remember, use that whiteboard as a sense of support for the students so they know exactly what you're focusing on. Attach the pictures. Okay. We have a famous saying about pictures. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I don't know who said it, but I like it. And I was just kind of joking with a friend of mine the other day. He said, even if it's only half right, that's still 500 words. You know, how many people get 500 words out of their students in a lesson? So again, pictures are great. Let's learn how to exploit those. So how do you use course book pictures in your classes? Please send us some of your ideas so we can share with other members of our audience. We have people from everywhere today. Yeah, you can create plenty of opportunities for speaking. The pictures worth 1,000 words. Brainstorming section, wonderful idea. Making inferences about a topic, excellent. You got some nice advanced teachers out there today, awesome. Very good, predicting what they might learn about. This is a key idea as far as cognitive studies, helping students prepare to read, prepare them to listen. Activating schema is a very important way to prepare students to learn more. Word clouds, mind maps, nice. Students guess what's in the picture, they describe what people are wearing, what they're doing. Absolutely, this is a very effective way. It seems very simple, but I've seen so many teachers who will walk in, they have their book, and they focus so much on the text, they forget about using those pictures where the students are providing more input to the lesson, or output for the lesson. We have some wonderful ways to exploit the books out there. Wonderful ways. So I'll just go over a few of these ideas. We have a few slides on pictures. Again, with the pictures in front of you, we're going to have the students learn more from them, and it helps to contextualize the lesson by having students make predictions about the text. Now let's just try to remember, a lot of these ideas we're thinking more about in a learner-centered way. We want to create more opportunities for students to provide the language, for students to explore the language through the picture. It doesn't have to be teacher-fronted. So remember, consider your pair work and group work design, the questions you create, and again, you can do this before or after listening or reading a text. So I'll return back to this, making predictions about a text. A few of you mentioned that. Again, it's a classic idea. Be sure to have the students cover the text that they're either going to read or to listen to. This is important so they don't just cheat. So the idea is to have them use the picture, explore what they already know. We can introduce the content or the context with the picture. Getting students to activate that previous knowledge, vocabulary, or just use the language that they know. Asking and answering questions. Again, this is a great opportunity for a teacher to use the whiteboard to present 1, 2, or 3 models. All of these are wonderful ways to get students to participate, not just teacher-fronted. Getting students to describe the picture. Again, this is a very broad statement, but again, very often you'll find that students can actually teach each other so much if the teacher provides the opportunity. Getting students to talk or speculate about the meaning in a picture. Other ways that a teacher can add to it is by adding useful phrases to their conversation through the use of the whiteboard. For example, maybe they're just learning something like simple present, but they don't know how to say, I think that, plus the simple present, or I think that in the past tense. So you can provide these little conversational phrases that they can use. Of course, the last one is something that's also just full of ideas, getting students to share their own knowledge of the context. Maybe they have opinions that you elicit from them through the questions that you provide on the whiteboard. Getting students to talk about the likes and dislikes or preferences. Another important thing that I often find lacking in classes is this cultural comparison. And I think this is very interesting. We're thinking about English as an international language, getting them to think about their own culture in comparison to the culture that they find in the course book. And of course, from that you can build role plays from the pictures too, so getting students to act as if they were in the picture. Now remember, to do these things successfully really requires a teacher to plan and to consider the questions that they're going to use for the tasks or the pair work or group work. What kinds of questions really get students to exploit the picture, really get them to provide their own language, provide their own perspectives, or just to continue to activate the previous knowledge. Again, use the whiteboard, collect the ideas from the students, you can review previous ideas, and just continue to build on the learner-generated language. They really enjoy being a part of an interactive classroom. If you have any other ideas, again, please share those with us. A lot of people are reading and following. A lot of great ideas. I can tell there. Who are sharing their ideas, and if you're just getting into the teaching world, again, there's a lot to learn here from your colleagues from all over the world today. The next one we're going to look at is, again, building on pictures. A lot of the books, as I said before, are made by international publishers, and very often they're for an international audience. They're not specifically for students in Venezuela or Paraguay or Ecuador or Russia or Japan. So it's very good for teachers to really think about, well, what's the context presented in the lesson, and what would be related in our own culture, so students can really begin to have a sense for how they use the language in their own particular countries. So we want to use pictures with the student's country, their city, maybe their environmental setting. As one of the disadvantages said, that very often that the texts are not very meaningful or relevant to them in a personal way. So we can actually use the pictures to bring those ideas into the classroom. Build the students' confidence and identity within the second language. Help them learn how to express their own culture, help them learn how to compare and contrast their own culture with maybe the English-speaking culture or another part of the world. Again, this helps them to really develop an ownership of the language. As I was saying, you can bring these pictures in, and it allows you to adapt the coursebook settings and to improvise lessons for getting students to write new texts or new conversations based on their local culture. This is a wonderful way to get students really excited and even go home using some of the language that they've learned in your class. All of these images are from Ecuador, as we're presenting here today from the Galapagos. All of these have a cultural connotation, very familiar to a lot of the students, and again, enabling them to express their own culture in the classroom. I found these on Google Images, I believe in Yahoo, there's Flickr. There are a number of websites available out there with lots and lots of wonderful pictures that you can use in your classroom. A lot of teachers are using these as part of their PowerPoints, which again is a great idea to provide a focus to the lesson. They offer a lot of opportunities for students to really think about different contexts, and there's a lot of vocabulary that they are learning to explore, but you will need to provide the tasks to elicit that language from them. And really a lot of your selection of pictures is going to depend on the ages and interests of students as well as the regions they're in. Okay, we have a little bit of a pause here. I can't quite get the next slide to come up. Taking a little time. There we are. I have a number of topics here. Remember, we're thinking about student-centered lessons. If the book doesn't provide you with the context that you need for your student population, you're really going to need to think about it as a teacher. What do my students want to talk about? What kinds of things would they be interested in? So here are just a long list of categories to consider. You can always come back to this. But again, music and food are wonderful ways to get students to think about their own culture as well as other popular cultures. Holidays and special events are always very popular. I use common occurrences that sometimes seem almost humorous to students. Never even thought that some of those situations could be possible in another culture, but it really creates interest and it gets them thinking, I'm going to use this language as a tool for international, intercultural communication. So if the book topic is too boring, think about it. You might need to stop, you might need to throw it out, and you might need to modify your lessons for your students. Again, here's just a list of a lot of the topics that you can consider. Some of them are familiar, some of them may be ones that you've never considered. The next section, as I said, I was thinking about focusing on pictures, and then I'm going to present some ideas about the texts. And these texts, as some of you know, are both conversational, or they might be more content, where the students are reading more about specific topics. Yeah, somebody said here, having students bring pictures to class. Absolutely, absolutely. Wonderful idea. Yes. Of course, one of the most popular ones I've seen is when students, sorry to go back to pictures, but someone had a great idea on the chat box here, getting students to bring in pictures of their personal life, just their family, and having them introduce their family to some of their classmates, or pictures of their daily life. things that they do on daily activities. These are wonderful ways for them to build poster sessions or little reports about things that they're doing in their life. It helps them to personalize their life. Some more ideas while I'm waiting for this slide to change here. It's a little bit slow on this end. We have somewhat of a slow connection out here. Yes, it depends on the student's age, if they're adult or teen. This is something that every teacher needs to consider with respect to their planning of lessons. Yeah, we're still waiting for the slide to advance here, but I'll just kind of go in there. The question that you're going to see, too far. The question is, how do you utilize conversations or reading texts in your classes? Again, please share your successful experiences or maybe ones that didn't work. Sometimes that's good feedback. This webinar needs your input and ideas. How are you using text in conversations? Yeah, using the whiteboard, absolutely. Getting those adventures, getting them onto the board, very exciting. Yeah, contextualizing language. That's a lot of what this is about, is helping students to use the language and build meaning around their lives. Visual learners, a key concept. Pictures are great. Internalizing the part of the language. There's some advanced teachers out there, so please be reading those. The chat box. There's some great ideas coming through, so use their ideas with some of the ones that I'm presenting. Graphic organizers, yes, that'll be in the PowerPoint. You're reading it, it's in the PowerPoint. Well, I'm just going to continue on with the slide. You're already going forward with some of your answers with how you're using conversations and reading text. Yes, let's make sure we, before we get into the text, very often for those low-level learners especially, they need time to prepare and process some of the ideas that they might be exposed to in the text. Getting them to predict or connect what's in the text with the pictures before, during, and after they're interacting with the conversation or the reading. Another popular way that I've seen used very successfully is teachers copying and then cutting up the text and having students order them again before. They can just read through the conversation or the text and you can think about it meaningfully and consider how will the students, what will happen when I'm listening and what will be the order of the conversation. Running or shouting dictations can be a little loud, but it's the students working with the meaning and the order of the text together. It's very interesting, but it takes the book out of it, and it helps students to really work with the language in their own way. Today, we just saw a really wonderful lesson by our RELO, they would say, on dictaglosses. That is another wonderful technique. People are asking about dictogloss. A simple way to explain that is when you put students into a group, or if they're higher level, you can put them into pairs. And after you've done some warm-up exercises, you can have the students take notes and tell them you're going to read the text at normal speed, and they need to try to remember it and write down as many of the words as possible. And after one or maybe two listenings, they are going to reconstruct the text as best they can. And then you can use a number of techniques to help them rework and to reorganize and to build the full text back up from scratch. Again, grouping, you read the text out loud in a dictation. The student follow as much as they can, but they can't follow everything, just like in a conversation. And then you have them rewrite the text from memory together and sharing the meaning and the ideas that they picked up. Does that help? Great. Getting students, another popular one is getting students to add or change words in conversations for their own social or even their own personal context. You know, you can
You can get them to work with adjectives or adverbs, maybe local vocabulary or local settings, and get them to try. And this really enables and pushes students to connect the meaning conveyed in the reading or the conversation to their local context. And of course, the use of graphic organizers, a wonderful way for students to reconsider the meaning and how a text might be organized. Another way of getting students to work with text in a more interactive way is having students imagine before or after, imagining the conversation before or after a story or conversation. That's where they're thinking, what was happening prior to this conversation, or what happened after that? What do you think happened after that? That gets them to extend the meaning in the text in their own ways. It helps them to be more creative with it. After they've worked with the comprehension and working with the text, they can build a little bit more creativity, getting them to speculate, doing role plays and interviews. This is where they're able to recycle previous vocabulary or grammar. Again, you're going to need to design the task to help to really push your students to and create more interaction from them. Consider ways to get students to compare or discuss their answers to comprehension questions. So this is such a simple and very easy way to get students to use the language and consider the meaning. But I often don't see it. Get them they have the comprehension questions, or maybe they only have part of it. But getting them to share and compare their ideas and their answers, not necessarily just the teacher providing them and having them. This is very good for low-level students because it really pushes them to listen, speak, to read, and write. And it's, again, a very simple procedure, and then the teacher can just provide guidance for asking and answering questions to clarify some of their answers. Getting students to personalize by giving advice or their own points of view. Maybe you'll get them to state similarities and differences with their own cultures or their own situations. Again, this helps the students to really express their connection to and the perspectives on the meaning in the text. You might need to model some of this language. Again, think about your whiteboard. What can the students do? What can the students not do? And how can you support them? The next one is varying the setting or the mood or the characters of a conversation. I've had a lot of fun with this. Students actually will take these kind of ideas and run with them sometimes. I get them to act like they're sitting in a park outdoors, leaning against a tree, and of course they have a very relaxed feel and a very relaxed setting, and they'll form the conversation, but of course they will have to change the conversation depending on the setting or the mood. Another setting might be at a concert where something is very loud and they're having to semi-scream each other's ear, or maybe they're in a library where they need to whisper the conversation to each other, but it adds a dramatic element to the conversation and gets them to play with it in different ways. The mood, sometimes I will say, well, you need to act like you're sleepy, or maybe you're very hungry and you're trying to get away from this person so you can go eat without, and there's just different ways of creating a different mood in a conversation. Characters can be crazy characters, or maybe well-known, popular figures that are central to the student's own setting. Great idea from guest number 115. Try to organize interviews. Students posing as newspaper reporters. Yeah, these are great ideas. There are so many ways to vary the students using the text in a variety of ways, and it has them thinking in a creative way, which actually stimulates a lot of language that doesn't come from the book. It's actually very, very interesting. The last one I have is a more commonly used one, the role play or acting out. Again, this is something that you're using with the changing the setting or the mood, getting students to really act out as much as they can. Sometimes I'll have them act it out with the book 2 or 3 times with the low-level students, and then, of course, getting them to come out of the text and try to build from what they have learned today. or maybe you can have them rewrite it and do their own group work presentations as part of a talent show on a Friday afternoon when the students are tired. Yeah, it's a role play for 35 students. You have to watch your time. Absolutely. But remember, you can set up those role plays where they're rewriting the role plays together. They're still going to learn a lot, and then you can ask for some of the groups that want to present their lesson, and everybody learns by watching and getting a lot of input from their own classmates, which can be, again, very learner-centered and a lot of fun. Okay, the last. Are there any more ideas out there? Yeah, we have a lot of interesting ideas. Again, the role play. Yeah, don't worry. Some of you are asking about getting this PowerPoint. Yes, if you will email me on the very front page, I gave my email address. Whenever it's convenient for you, you can email me at GalapagosELT.com. I'll send that to you, and I'll make it available on SlideShare also. Oh, there we go. Den Bahaga in Lima said yes, they will provide that, so you'll be able to download that. Okay. Yeah, don't worry. This whole program will be taped and put on the archive there on the YouTube. Our last question, looking at exercises. A lot of teachers will tend to, more often than not, they will tend to use these very individually. There are ways to create variation. So, yeah, think about that. Have you ever used exercises in course-books in an effective way? Especially role plays, very difficult to do in 10 minutes, absolutely. Yeah, how are any of you using exercises in your course books in interactive ways? Are you getting students to use those in more common, more interactive ways where they're actually using the exercises? Providing additional information, very good. Getting students to exchange papers and have them grade each other? Sure, yeah, that makes them the teachers, kind of like a mini role reversal where students are thinking about what they know about the language and looking at their classmates. Encouraging students to do exercises in groups of pairs. Great job, Lena. Yeah, that's a great way, and it's very simple, but a lot of people never really think about that. Just creating a pair work dynamic for the students to work together and discuss the ideas, and it really creates a lot more interaction with thinking about each other's ideas and building off each other's knowledge. Yeah, of course, there are such a variety of the kinds of exercises that you'll see in books, whether it be jumbled sentences, as you can see in the picture, there's some word searches, or getting students to write questions for sentences, answers for questions, crosswords. There are a lot of ways to get students to, yeah, exactly, working in pairs, getting them to interact more. So hopefully some of these ideas will be new to you. And again, please continue to share your own experiences and successes. Again, going back to the idea of our overall goal is to create more student-centered interaction. The general goal is to give them more interaction time where the students are using the language. This also enables you as a teacher to transfer the responsibility for learning to them. It's hard to overstate the importance of that because there's only so much that students can actually learn in just the class time they have. I know that And in Ecuador, we have 5 classroom hours of English per week in the schools. But I've heard that in Peru, maybe there's 2, or in some countries there's only 1. So in order for them to really learn the language, it's going to require effort on them outside of the class. So this is where you begin to transfer that responsibility to them. So in any one of these, again, think about how to use your whiteboard, how to get students to work in pairs and groups. And many teachers will think that it's their responsibility to make the students learn, but there are little tricks that you can use. Yes, absolutely. The main idea is to keep the dynamic alive. Again, great idea. Lena has another great idea, matching your students' learning styles with the multiple intelligences. This is, again, very important considerations for teachers when they're building in more and more different kinds of activities and different kinds of techniques in the classroom. Well, let's look at our bulleted list here. We have, as one or two of you have already mentioned, students do and or check answers in pairs or groups. This can be before or after, then maybe they do a practice exercise. So sometimes I'll have students do a simple an exercise just to see what they're capable of doing, and I won't tell them the answers, and then we'll do a drill, or maybe we'll do some practice activities, and then I'll have them go back and check their own work, or as some of you said, they can check each other's work. And then after they've done that, I'll just give them the opportunity to ask for any clarification. They might need a little bit of classroom language. For example, what did you get for number 3? Or I don't know about number 3. Can somebody help me? It gets students to ask each other as a class about that. Then you, as the teacher, are more like a police officer. You're just directing the flow of traffic, and when needed, you can step in and provide the correct answer if there's any kind of debate. Yeah, the next one. There's another great idea showing up here, getting students to work individually, that's fine, and then compare and correct their own answers in groups, sure. Again, this creates a lot of interaction where they're actually working with each other's own background knowledge. They're kind of correcting each other, and it takes the teacher out of that where they're actually working with each other. Again, it creates a lot of motivation. Students are, when they're doing their homework or doing their exercises, rather than thinking about doing it correctly for the teacher, they're doing it correctly for their friends or for themselves, which really creates a very different dynamic. Another way of getting them, having them work in teams where they're making questions to elicit answers from the other team. For example, maybe they're working pair work, and students will make questions for the 2 or 3 answers that are from the exercise. So the exercise was to fill in the blank or to do a true-false, and the students will work on making questions. This is often another overlooked problem with the students, is that they don't know how to make questions. So providing them opportunities to make their own and to ask the class, and having the students, again, interact with each other rather than just the teacher-fronted class is key. A very enjoyable way to check their answers to exercises is creating multiple choice. And that's a very simple one, where you take one piece of A4 paper and you get them to write, and you cut it in 4 pieces, and then you write A, B, C, or D, and you give them a multiple choice. And then you can also see which students are actually following the material or the accuracy of the idea. You can also just do a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, depending on whether they think the answer is right or wrong. You can build that as kind of a listening exercise from teachers to students, or you can have students create their own quizzes. A lot of fun there. Just like you can cut up a text, you can cut up the exercises and make a team race out of it. If you want to see 3 or 4 students helping each other, make a team race out of it, where they're doing, say, 5 or 6 questions from your exercises or filling in the blank and getting them to race back and forth across the classroom. Again, this is not so wonderful for 35 students, but you can do it with some of your smaller classes or create 5 teams of 5 people each. But again, they are working together to make the answers clear. Again, this is a great idea to do it on a Thursday afternoon or a Friday afternoon when maybe the students are a little bit quieter or tired. The last one is getting students to act out or draw the answers. Sometimes, again, you can go over it verbally or linguistically, but then you can get them to act it out through a charades or a Pictionary. I tend to never have one-word answers in my class. When Kevin goes in there, he's pushing complete sentences a lot. And I will continue to stress that. And as I continue to hold higher expectations for my students, even during the activities, it inductively helps the students build their language skills because they realize that they must provide answers in complete sentences so they can actually push a lot of that language. Memory games, absolutely. Memory games from PICS, of course, you can use that as part of your exercises. Again, lots of wonderful ideas coming through on your chat board. That kind of brings us toward the end of our lesson. Just to kind of bring it all together, these are not very, very difficult ideas. A lot of them require very little resources. It's just a change of mind, a change of strategy for teachers. Continue building those toolboxes, continue building those ideas. You'll find that you are constantly shifting between 5, 10, or 15 different kinds of techniques that are very successful with a group of students. But you do want to continue to offer a variety of activity and a variety of ways of interacting with the student books. That will automatically cut out some of any kind of the boredom that you might, or the quietness that you see in a classroom in which the students are just waiting for answers or waiting for the correction or waiting for somebody to provide them with guidance. Again, we have the book's pictures, the text, and the exercises. All of these things, if you think about them in a different way, you can create much, much more learner-centered interaction. If you're not really into studying theory, my 4 golden rules of learning language: if you want students to speak more, you must provide opportunities to make them. If you want students to learn how to listen, you must help them listen. If you want students to read or to write, you must also provide them opportunities in class. That's where you're turning the classroom around through pair work and group work, using a variety of features, including the local context, using your whiteboard techniques to support them. All right, if there are no more last-minute questions, are there any more questions or ideas? I'm sure that I've left a few of the ideas out, and there are always another 1,000 or 2,000 ideas as teachers continue to explore those. Thank you very much, Gris Cuba, and she said she loved the exercises to build interaction. Yes, keep pushing your students. This is a wonderful way to get students to just continue to provide a lot more input and output in your class. That's where they're going to continue to learn magically. If you want to continue to do your own exploration, please feel free to look at the bibliography. If you look down at the bottom of the page, remember some of these ideas were from a free downloadable book found on the American English website. Please take the opportunity to go there and explore that website. There's a lot of resources available out there for you teachers who are looking for a lot more